Hi guys, today we're going to be working with fractions, specifically halves, thirds, and fourths. So basically a fraction is a part of a whole. And when you think about this, I want you to think about sharing with somebody. If I was going to share a candy bar with you, you'd want an equal part. So if two friends are sharing a candy bar, you'd want to make two equal parts so that both friends get the same amount. If three friends were sharing a candy bar, you would want three equal parts so that all three friends get the same amount and it's fair. If we had four friends sharing, you would want four equal parts so that all four friends would get an equal share. Okay? So when you're dividing things into fractions, you have to remember that all the parts have to be equal. All right, so today in our workbook, we're going to be working on page 777. And on page 777, they ask us to fill those shapes with other shapes in equal amounts. So at the top, we have a big rectangle. We are going to fill that rectangle with squares. If we were at school, you would be using the cubes that we have. You're going to have to just freehand draw those in. Try to make them as equal as possible. So I'm going to divide my rectangle into three equal squares. 1, 2, 3 equal squares. So that's what thirds would look like, filling that rectangle. If I have a square, I'm going to be able to divide that square into 4 equal squares. So go ahead and divide your square into 4 equal squares. To be able to do that, you're going to want to divide it in half and then divide it in half again. So it takes me a little bit to get mine off the screen, sorry. Okay, so you'll basically cut it in half and then cut it in half the other way. That will make 4 equal squares. And then you're going to do the same thing for the rectangle. You're going to divide your rectangle into the 3 equal squares. And again, just make them as equal as you can. All right, because we don't have the cubes at home to trace. So just make them as equal as you can. The triangle down at the bottom, we're going to be able to divide into smaller triangles. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so to draw that, we're going to make a triangle at the top, and then 2 triangles at the bottom, which leaves you with a triangle in the middle. Our last shape is a hexagon. We're going to divide our hexagon into triangles as well. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 triangles there. However, since we're not doing sixths, we're going to divide that shape in half, which would be the equivalent of 3 triangles on top and 3 triangles on the bottom. So thirds on top and thirds on the bottom. But we're just going to make 2 halves for that because our numbers are only doing halves, thirds, and fourths. So please divide your rectangle into thirds, your square into fourths, your triangle into fourths and your hexagon into half. And the hexagon you can also divide in half this way. And that works the same. As long as both halves are the same, you can divide it vertically or you can divide it horizontally. They want us then to tell how many blocks we used to cover each shape. So for the rectangle, I used 3 blocks to cover it. For the square, I used 4. For the triangle, I used 4. And for the hexagon, I used 2. Okay, go ahead and fill in your paper and then turn to the back to page 778. Don't forget that you can pause the video if you need to. On page 778, they're giving us some new vocabulary. The first word they tell us is partition. Partition means to separate. So if I take a circle and I cut it in half, I just partitioned that circle into 2 separate halves. The other words they give us are half, which means to divide something into 2 parts. Thirds, which means to divide something into 3 parts. And fourths, which means to divide something into 4 equal parts. So now we're going to take a look at the problems at the bottom. It says describe the equal parts and write halves, thirds, or fourths. So if I'm looking at those, it's a square, but it's divided into 2 rectangles. And so those 2 rectangles are 2 halves. If you're not sure how to spell it, it's in the writing right up above. Okay, number 2, our circle is divided into 4 equal parts. 4 equal parts is fourths. Our rectangle is divided into thirds. 3 equal parts is thirds. Okay, for number 4, we also have 3 equal parts. So that is thirds as well. Right, down at the bottom, it says draw lines to partition each shape into 2 equal parts. So when you do this, you can either divide it vertically. So now we divided that rectangle into 2 squares. Or you can divide it horizontally. We divided that rectangle into 2 rectangles. And I'm not sure if you can see that, so I'm going to lower it just a little bit. Okay. The square they want us to divide into 4 equal parts. And actually I'm going to draw this rectangle next to it so we remember we can divide it that way or that way. 4 equal parts, so we can divide it into equal squares, like that. Or we can also take that square and divide it into 4 equal rectangles. Okay, either way, it's still fourths. Our talk math at the bottom says to explain how you can divide a pie so that 4 people each get equal parts. So I'm actually going to draw my pie. Okay? I want the 4 people to get equal parts. So if I divide the pie like this, are those equal parts? Is everybody getting the same amount? They're not, so that doesn't work. I'm going to divide it in half, and then I'm going to divide my halves in half again. Are those equal parts? If my circle is perfect, they will be equal parts. Okay, go ahead and try the on my own on page 779 and 780. If you need any help with this, let me know. Have a great night.